The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power into creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. We got ourselves a fabulous show for you. Really cool, really important, really powerful topics this week. Great topics of conversation for you. We got a fantastic guest coming up in the second segment. We're going to be joined by John Lister, the head of community at Rap Fame. Rap Fame just put out a report recently about underground rap artists and to what extent they are embracing AI and the current state of the underground genre. It's really, really thought-provoking stuff. I'm looking forward to sharing that interview with all of you. Let's get right into it. Let's go ahead and bring in our co-host this week. Love it when this guy joins us. Zach Sloan is here. Hi, Zach.
What up, Ryan? How are you guys doing out there?
Oh, I'm doing so great. It's so good to see your face. I'm seeing from your caption under your name, it says Zach Sloan, new music out now. Tell me more.
So I released a song this week, just a single. I haven't released anything as a solo artist in a few years since I've been playing with Dear Marsha, but Dear Marsha's been on a little bit of a break. And so I was going through the hard drive, Ryan, of like looking at the album I was making before I joined up with Dear Marsha and started picking songs I wanted to get out there. And I got one that came out called Conspiracy, and then I got another one coming out in a couple weeks called The Burned. So new music coming from me as a solo artist.
Very, very exciting. I love that, and we all need to go out and give that lots of spins, as they say. I'm thrilled for you, and
Please do.
love
I
it
would
whenever
love-
you put new stuff out.
I would love to have dozens, if not scores of listeners.
Dozens. There are dozens of us. I'm interested in this interview that's coming up in the second segment, Zach. We pre-recorded it, and I think you're going to be pretty intrigued by some of the insights that John Lister from Rap Fame brings up. I'll go ahead and spoil it. I think the headline topic of our interview is going to be the main finding of this Rap Fame report about the underground rap movement, specifically talking about the extent to which underground rappers are using AI. Because if you look at the artists as a whole, Rap Fame study found that a significant portion of artists across genres are at least dabbling in AI, experimenting with AI, seeing what AI can do for them as creators. The study that Rap Fame put out have found that about 75% of artists are using AI in one form or another. One genre, however, that seems to have the strongest amount of resistance to embracing AI is underground rap. And that's what the study found. Only about 2% of the underground rap community is using AI. And that's a particularly intriguing finding when you consider that underground rap is not exactly a genre that shies away from technology. They've always, that community has always been on the cutting edge of using technological tools to help them record their music, put interesting effects on their music, but it is also a genre that highly values an authentic voice, right? If you're going to rap, you want people who, really believe the lyrics that they're saying. So authenticity matters in that genre. But it's pretty interesting that they seem to be zigging while the rest of the industry is zagging when it comes to artificial intelligence.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, can you imagine? Nothing would kill a rapper's career. Nothing has killed rappers' careers like when the fans find out somebody ghostwrites with them.
That's
right?
true.
Authenticity is, in hip-hop, I think, maybe the most important piece of the puzzle. I mean, think back to all the great rappers. How would you feel if you found out that somebody else wrote their lyrics? It'd be done. If you told me that somebody used AI to polish a Aerosmith song, I'd be like, lame, but whatever. But you would not look at Tupac the same way.
That is pretty, that is a pretty unique aspect of
Yeah.
rap, right? Like that.
It's one of the things I have respected about hip hop, even though I don't consider myself a hip hop head. I have some hip hop I like, but the thing I respect about it most is that you better be able to do it. You better be able to do it better than everybody else. And hip hop is a perpetual competition for who is the best. And I think that's why it brings out some of the best art. So yeah, this doesn't surprise me at all. 2% sounds high when we're talking about hip hop.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe the 2% that's using it's only using it for like spell checking or something because that authenticity matters so much. That's pretty, yeah. But I'm interested and excited to share his insights with everybody. That's going to be pretty cool in the next segment. In the meantime, I did not tell her I was going to ask her to come on, but producer Lauren, can I chat with you for a hot minute before we get started with some of the major topics? You were across the pond recently. Last week, you were in Portugal on a cruise. How did that go?
It was
Any
in
cool moments to
Portugal,
share?
Spain, Gibraltar, which technically is the United Kingdom and not. I like buskers. I don't know if it's. I have a soft spot for buskers. It's an Edinburgh thing. We did a feature on them when I was out at the Fringe Festival. No, you did not tell me I was saying anything, but coming on right now and popping like just the number of guitar players that skin as like leather from sitting in the Ibiza sun for like way too long, but like out there and that like commitment to that music
Yep.
and the way that like those instruments sound when they're echoing inside these like architectural like they find their spots, they know where they're going. It's like the subway artists in New York. I don't know. I didn't think about it till this moment, but there's a lot of good buskers in tourist towns.
Yeah. And I'm guessing it's like a whole other level of busking when you are in that part of the world with,
Spanish
and of course
guitars.
yeah. And you're in a touristy area, so they're everywhere. Plus it's the World Cup, so like everybody's out and about and everything. Like that's
They're all here. Like the World Cup was here last night in Miami. And I'm on the other side of the world where people are like they take football so seriously. Like the town squares are entirely done out with like projector screens and like and people are like, don't you want a souvenir? And I'm like, it feels wrong to come over here to buy a souvenir for the World Cup that's happening back home.
Yeah.
So I couldn't bring myself around to doing like football celebrations over there, but they were happening.
By the way, that I think is to me the funniest thing about the USA having this just spectacular run at the World Cup right now is that we might make a deep run in this. Like we might go really far in this World Cup. And largely compared to the rest of the world, we don't give a damn about soccer. I mean, what is more American than that, right? Being really, really good at something that's like our 9th priority when it comes to sports. I mean, we did this for years with like Lance Armstrong in cycling, right? Like we were the best at cycling and like we didn't even care. Like it wasn't even like on network television when Lance Armstrong was winning this thing. And we just like, and the French cared so much about this.
Dude, and not
And
only
we didn't even give a shit.
we were the best at cycling, we were the best at steroids, and we were the best at hiding it until he got caught.
No, we were very proud of the best at steroids. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Americans cared
own
more
that
about
one.
the
We own
steroids.
that. Yeah.
Oh, they were all using.
Of course they were. I'm
We
not
were just
saying
the
they
best at it because we're America.
Exactly.
The best at soccer. We're the best at cycling. We're the best at cheating.
Nobody
USA.
cheats in America.
But Miami takes it to another level, though, right? Like we're the same town that doesn't care about hockey until we're in the World Cup, like the World Cup,
Oh, and the Stanley Cup, yeah.
until the Stanley Cup, the other cup. But we're like when we're winning, all of a sudden you will see people banging on pots and pans in the street,
Yeah.
cheering like we have been the biggest fans. We built a new stadium and got our own soccer team because the World Cup was coming to the US. Like this is the only way Miami knows how to do it. We're like, hold on. If we're doing it, we're going to look good doing it. We're going to pretend like we've been doing this all along. We're going to be a pro. We're going to win this thing. And then we're going to turn around and go, what? And next year we are not going to care at all. They'll be like, it's not coming back for a while. Who cares?
There is something about that I kind of love, actually.
It really is beautiful. And like I've seen some really funny TikToks of people coming up with like American soccer chants.
Oh no.
Because like, like Europeans, they have the best soccer chants, right?
Yes.
Like the Brits have all the really funny soccer chants, and largely our soccer chants aren't as good. Like just go, I believe that we will win. No, like
Why not us? Right. Yeah, exactly.
soccer chants have to be self-deprecating. They have to have humor behind them. But like I heard one, I heard people on
bagpipes.
TikTok. Yeah, or bagpipes.
They need bagpipes.
But there was a TikToker who said that one of our chants should be, how did it go? Our healthcare is bad, our leaders are worse, but here in Group D, we're coming in first. And then they also said, if the U.S. wins the game, you call it soccer. If the U.S. wins the game, you call it soccer. If the U.S. wins the game, you will change the effing name. If the U.S. wins the game, you call it soccer.
Oh no.
You know what? I nominate that national anthem.
There you go.
National anthem.
Easier to sing than the one we have.
True story.
I mean, I don't even know how the offsides rule works. And I'm pretty sure it's offside. It's not even offsides, and that's how little I
offside,
know.
yeah.
And yet, I've gotten myself into soccer from watching us just be good at something. All right, let's get. I got a couple stories here, Zach. First one being a bit of a sad news on the sad side here. Clive Davis has passed away. The legendary record executive died on June 22nd from an age-related illness at the age of 94. His 6-decade career included heading up Columbia Records, Arista Records, J Records, RCA, and BMG North America. And, when people think of Clive Davis, you think of all of the artists he's credited with helping break, like Janis Joplin, Bruce Springsteen, Aretha Franklin, Whitney Houston, Santana, Alicia Keys. Like it's a pretty impressive list. And, want to acknowledge his life and kind of talk about his legacy, particularly as it pertains to indie artists. I actually, interestingly enough, heard about Clive Davis's death, not from the news, not from Billboard, but from a text from Metal Dave, Zach.
What?
Yeah, no, he broke this story for me even before I could find out about it. Like somebody like me who prides himself, I'm like, oh, I got to have my finger on the pulse of the industry. I always have to know what's going on. Metal Dave beat me to this and texted me before anybody else in the industry told me. But he texted it to me with like an interesting question, which was, how do you present this story, Ryan? How do you look at Clive Davis's life? Like, do you celebrate him and everything that he achieved and everything he meant to the industry? Or is he just like the representative of everything that you've spent your life fighting in the industry, right? Because he's the quintessential big record label executive, the traditional music industry that I've spent years fighting against. Like, where does Ryan stand on this was kind of his question. And I want to talk about that because I think it's an interesting conversational thread. And particularly because, and I think this is why like Davis's death hits me a little bit, is when I was in high school and thinking about like what careers I wanted to have, I wanted to be Clive Davis. That was like, but and this was like in the 90s and 2000s, like before the industry kind of collapsed and Napster destroyed it and everything. Like I wanted to be Clive Davis. He was a lawyer, and I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, and was able to rise through the industry. Like this wasn't somebody who was tremendously musically talented. He didn't get into the industry through his musical ability. He was a very astute business person, coupled with the fact that he had a really fantastic ear for music, right? He was known for having this sort of like sixth sense that, he could hear a hit and like know it's a hit, even though he couldn't tell you why. And, he couldn't like make music on his own, but like he had an ear for a hit, and he was really good at breaking artists. Like a lot of the artists that he broke were artists that like, they weren't turnkey properties when he got them, right? These were people who didn't have any fame. He found these people when they were at zero and turned them into the biggest artists in the world. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to be Clive Davis. And so he's what got me into the industry. He's what got me reading books about the industry and reading Billboard magazine every week it came out and just wanting to get into this business. He was like the person I emulated. And I also have to reconcile that with the fact that as I got further into the industry and started fighting against the label model, I did sort of found myself diverging from the Clive Davis path and said, like, I don't want to be Clive Davis anymore. I want to, for better or worse, like, get the Clive Davises out of this industry, or at least reduce their power. And, but now, with all these years that have passed and hearing that he's passed away, like, when I balance those two kind of sides of it together, I still can't help but feel like a little bummed about this. Even though like he and I have very different philosophies about what the music industry should be, he is beloved by a lot of artists who owe their careers to him. And, he's a tremendous larger than life figure who, had an amazing run, 6 decades of being at the top of the industry in an industry where nobody gets to be at the top for more than a few years, right? The lifespan of a record executive is very, very short. And he was always the biggest for his entire run, which, I think is worth celebrating in its own right.
Well, let me ask you a question, Ryan. When you wanted to be Clive Davis, did you want to be Clive Davis because he was powerful, because he exerted his will over artists, or because he could hear the next great artist? Because I think there's two different things, right? And I know you've never in your life probably been like, I can't wait to lord over all these people.
I do.
Right?
Can't wait to get my shot at exploiting creatives.
Yeah, and I think it's worth recognizing that the guy was able to ID talent that other people might pass on. And one artist that he picked out that I really enjoyed, who was on Arista Records back in the day, was Shannon Curfman. She was a young blues guitar player. I think she was like 15 when she made her first record. And I remember getting her record and loving it, but nobody else in the industry really picked up on it. But like Arista took a shot on her.
Yeah.
And I wish it panned out better for her. I mean, she's still Kid Rock's guitar player, so she's doing okay. But those were things that I always kind of appreciated about Clive Davis. The industry issues aside, I can separate the two. I can appreciate somebody's talent and maybe not necessarily agree with the label model itself. But yeah, I think that you're able to reconcile two halves to this one, right? I also don't know a ton about Clive Davis's personal life, so it's hard for me to speak too much beyond that. But like, I think as a music industry head, he's worth recognizing.
I mean, he is the first person you should think of when you think of a record executive. And I mean, his longevity was never just like a foregone conclusion. It was never like, oh, he was always at the top. There were plenty of times in his career when people wrote off Clive Davis. Mm-hmm. Like after Arista kind of, hit its valley, right? Like it was, in the 90s, it was the biggest label around. Yep. And then eventually, like when Napster came in, like a lot of labels got crushed, including Arista. And so back in the 90s, everybody was saying, okay, Clive Davis is done. He had an amazing run, starting in the 60s with Columbia Records, through Arista. Now we're putting him out to pasture. Like he was supposed to be put out to pasture like in 2001. Mm-hmm. And all he did after that was start up J Records, discover Alicia Keys, and then, get in, and then everybody goes, oh crap, he's not done yet. Goes to RCA, runs BMG North America, and has another 25 years, kicking ass in the industry. That's, amazing. And I will say this about
resurrecting Carlos Santana's career
resurrecting Carlos. A very good point. We don't know about Supernatural and everything and the absolute chokehold that album had on all of us in the early 2000s, late 90s, whenever that came out, without Clive Davis getting behind, that project and realizing the potential in, hey, this amazing generational guitar player, let me get a bunch of famous artists from today to play on an album with him and only create like the coolest album that's ever been made as a result.
Great record.
I still love that record. And so like that's worth celebrating. I think another thing that's worth acknowledging about Clive Davis is that he represents a brand of record executive that I miss, because he represents the music industry that at least believed in like, okay, the purpose of a record label is to take an artist with potential who doesn't have fans develop that artist, help build its fan base, and help make that person a star, right? It was, the demo deal all the way to superstar track. There's actually such a thing as A&R. We're going to discover these diamonds in the rough. And so the label actually served a function at one point where it was actually, okay, we're going to find somebody who isn't famous and we're going to make them famous. And at some point along the line, the music industry lost its way and it became less about taking artists at zero and developing them and more about, we're not even going to look at you as a label unless you've already come to us with a fan base. We want to see your massive social media following. You got to have lots of, traction on Spotify before we even take a look at you, which is the way the industry is today. And, what I appreciate about Davis is that he was a purveyor of the old model, which was, I'm going to discover Alicia Keys in a club somewhere. I'm going to discover Whitney Houston singing backup for another artist somewhere, and I'm going to make them stars. I'm going to actually develop artists because that's what record labels are supposed to do. And so I appreciate that about him, and I miss that part of what the music industry used to be. But contrast that with the fact that he still believed in the traditional model, right? Like a Clive Davis record label is a record label that owned your masters, that paid really crappy royalty rates, that made it very difficult to get out of your label deal. Like all the stuff that I spent a whole book railing about, like Clive Davis was the architect of a lot of that stuff.
And again, you have to separate the two. And also, I never want to bash somebody who's recently passed. That's not the goal. But I think it is worth also considering that the model that he had, or that he was the head of, was not artist friendly by any stretch of the imagination, but also I think he actually cared about music. I don't know if you can say that about a lot of executives. He at least gave a crap about the music, which I can appreciate.
No question about that. That is, you cannot say anything otherwise when it comes to Clive Davis. He was, he really did love the artists who he worked with, and they loved him. Springsteen, Aretha Franklin, Alicia Keys, these people all had, nothing but laudatory things to say about this person. And he did make significant contributions as well to developing the next generation of artists. I mean, you can't mention his legacy without also mentioning the $5 million he donated to NYU to create the Clive Davis Institute at the Tisch School, which has helped generations of creators. So, I mean, that's my feeling on Clive Davis. I can't, I think it's a legacy that's harder for me to parse than just to say he was, all good, or, here's some things that I don't favor. But I mean, one thing I can't deny is his significance and what he has meant to this industry as we know it. And, what he kind of meant in my own life, because I'm not here. I don't work in this industry. I don't work with artists without being inspired by Clive Davis.
And Teenage Zach knew the name of one record executive, right? He was as far as I knew, he was the only one, but he wasn't, but he was certainly the most prominent, and for a good reason.
There you go. Okay. So that's, I'm going to miss him. And I know the industry will as well. All right, let's, one more piece of news here before we head into the break and then bring in John Lister from Rap Fame. Wanted to talk about the latest updates with with what they're calling the No Fakes Act, which stands for the Nurture Originals, Foster Art, and Keep Entertainment Safe Act. This is a bill that we've talked about for a couple years now, basically ever since generative AI has become a part of our lives. There have been legislative efforts, including various versions of this No Fakes Act, which has tried to address what I think is one of the biggest dangers and plagues of AI as it pertains to the entertainment industry, which is the creation of deep fakes, right? People, using AI to create videos where it looks like an artist is endorsing a product that they don't actually endorse, or somebody uses a deep fake of a popular artist's voice to make it look like they're performing or wrote a song that they didn't actually write. Big problem in this industry. And
or make largely an artist say something that they did not, that is highly harmful.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a huge problem. And one of the reasons why, as a country, we haven't been able to stamp this problem out yet, because it seems like everybody can be like, well, yeah, you shouldn't be allowed to just steal a person's voice and likeness. The reason why we haven't been able to kind of snuff this out legally is that there is no right at the federal level to your name and likeness, right? That we have copyright law, which protects the works that you create. We have trademark law, which protects your brand and things like that. We have patent law, which protects the things that you invent. But there is no federal national IP law that protects your likeness and your voice, what we would call the right of publicity. There are state laws, and each state kind of enforces it a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on what state you're in. But it's a patchwork of laws. It makes it very hard to enforce and protect your rights. And so we've needed a federal law for this for a while. And that's what the No Fakes Act aims to do. Again, this law has been kind of put out for a number of years. It's never had any meaningful traction until now. On June 18th, the Senate Judiciary Committee has unanimously voted to send the No Fakes Act to the Senate floor. This law, as I said before, would prohibit the distribution of unauthorized digital replicas of a person's image or likeness, and also hold platforms liable for knowingly hosting such replicas. And I think the fact that it made it through the Judiciary Committee and unanimously it bodes pretty well for the bill's chances. There are experts out there that say that the chances of this bill actually becoming law is about 30%, which for any bill is actually pretty dang good.
That's not bad.
I mean, most laws that get proposed are less than 1%. So 30% is pretty good. That tells me, with that kind of traction, that either this bill passes or a future version of this bill in a later Congress might pass, right? It's getting positive momentum. Like legislation like this, it usually takes several Congresses before it passes, but there's momentum for it. And I think that's, and I think what also helps with the momentum is the groups that support this bill, because it's a pretty interesting group, right? Record labels like UMG and Warner have thrown their support behind this bill. Major media companies like Disney are supporting this bill. But also on the other side, unions like SAG-AFTRA support this bill. And here's the wildest one, Zach. Among the groups that have thrown their support behind this bill, AI companies like OpenAI and Google. So even the AI companies want this law. And you might say, well, why would the AI companies want that? Like this kind of law could potentially limit the growth of AI and maybe potentially impose liability on AI companies. And the reason why the AI companies are behind this as well is for what they talked about, creating this national federal right. Because one of the things that the No Fakes Act would do is it would say that, okay, all the state level laws about this area, they all get preempted. There's going to be one federal law that we all follow. And so the AI companies, they love that. They're like, look, we don't love to be regulated, but we'd rather be regulated by one single federal standard than 50 different state laws.
Right.
So you put all that together, everybody seems to support this bill. It has very strong support in Congress. And I would say it has my support too. There was one wrinkle in the law that I was worried about, and I was always worried about it in different incarnations of this bill, which was transferability of this right of publicity. So the big thing that I was always scared of if a bill like this got passed is, could it be abused, right? Could we be living in a world where, for example, a record label could sign an artist and as a condition of the record deal, say, by signing this deal, you also agree to transfer your name and likeness rights to us in perpetuity, right? That was always my fear, is that like artists who don't know better might inadvertently transfer these rights to other parties and then lose out on their own likeness rights, right? You would literally not own your own voice. And so that scared me. But to this bill's credit, they have addressed my nightmare scenario. They actually put language in the bill that specifically prohibits the transfer or sale of these rights to a second party during the lifetime that you exist. So you can license your rights temporarily to like a record label or something, but you cannot permanently transfer them. And if you do license the rights, it has to be in writing. It can't last longer than 10 years, and it has to clearly state and limit the nature of the license. So it's got real protections in there to protect artists, which I love. And so if it's this version of the bill, if it's a version 2 years from now in the next Congress, I like where this is heading. And to me, it's a very necessary legislative solution.
So, what about the counter argument that a few congressmen raised, like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee and Eric Schmidt? They all brought up concerns about this infringing on free speech. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh boy, I can't. But I mean, to think that I might not that I've lost the support, Zach, of such distinguished public servants as Ted Cruz and Mike Lee. Oh man, that's how you know you're on the right track when it comes to legislation. Like, if you ever support something that Ted Cruz and Mike Lee don't support, it's probably good policy.
So, true story, when you sent me this article, I started reading through it and I started thinking, what are the counter arguments? What would you say? And one of the ones I thought about was free speech. This is infringing on my free speech to create things. It's like, I thought to myself, there's no way. There's nobody that sinister to make a free speech argument. And then I went to the next paragraph in the article and it said, Ted Cruz is concerned about free speech implications. I'm curious, though, legitimately, to get your lawyer perspective on that.
Well, here's the thing about the free speech stuff, right? When Ted Cruz is saying, oh my God, what about the free speech? We're losing free speech. He doesn't actually care about free speech. He's not thinking about like the broader constitutional implications. He just knows that there are bleep holes on the far right who are putting out like horrific AI deepfakes of like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Yeah. And he doesn't want those to go away, right? Like, he knows that like Donald Trump loves to use AI to make, people on the left look like they're doing horrific stuff. He posts that stuff on his True Social account every day. So when he's saying, I care about free speech, he's saying, I care about the ability of terrible people on the far right to be able to do terrible things with AI. The bill already has free speech protections, right? It has, it carves out things like for fair use and news reporting and things like that. And also, there is already a free speech protection for this law. There's already a First Amendment protection for this law. It's called the First Amendment, right? Like, correct. And by the way, like the First Amendment still exists like in the world of copyright. Like, yes, you have free speech. You're not, you're largely not allowed to steal people's work to advocate for your free speech rights. There's things like fair use and things like that. But like, we can still have free speech and the First Amendment while still protecting people's rights to their voice. Like, yes, you have free speech rights. What you can't do is, make it look like, by exercising your free speech rights that, somebody else shares the same terrible opinion you have by using their voice for something. Like, again, like I feel pretty good about where I stand on legislation if like Ted Cruz is on the other side of it. Like that's, I would go as far as say like that's kind of my North Star when it comes to legislation. Like if you ever want to know where Ryan Kairalla stands on a public policy issue, look at where Ted Cruz stands on that issue. And it's the opposite.
Well, and I think one thing you said that is, kind of points to the issue here is that free speech is regulated. Speech is regulated. Like, I can't steal a Bob Dylan song and claim free speech.
Yeah.
Right. And so to me, it strikes as a similar point. And I mean, we have limits on free speech all over. The classic case of can't yell fire in a movie theater, right? So I think that I agree with you completely. I think this is just Ted Cruz and company just wanting to be terrible. So I enjoy this bill. I have not read it in its entirety yet. Have you read the whole thing, Ryan?
Painfully, yes.
I knew you had. I had that thought. Like, Ryan's read all of this. I have not. But
because I was worried about the transfer piece, right? Like when this law came out, my first thought was like, oh my God, there's going to be a bunch of media companies that are stealing artists' likeness rights by having artists unknowingly sign away, their likeness rights in contracts and things like that. And so then I looked at the bill. I was like, oh, they thought of that. They've addressed that issue. Fantastic.
Love it. I think 10 years is too long, but
that could be.
At this point, take what you can get, I suppose. But I think 10 years is definitely too long because a career can come and go in that amount of time. And then it might leave an artist in the lurch without access to their own voice for a lengthy period of time. So not a fan of that. Would like to see that being much shorter. But Nobody asked me.
Oh, it's a very good point. And I would also say that, like, I'm not even sure if I love this bill 100% in its current form. What I really am a fan of is the fact that it's getting traction. And I think hopefully by like 2 years from now, 4 years from now, this bill is going to continue to get better in subsequent Congresses. And then, maybe by like the early 2030s, we'll have like a good version of this that's been vetted, that we've had given policymakers all a chance to weigh in. Because you don't want to create a new intellectual property right too quickly, right? This is a major piece of IP legislation. We want to make sure we get it right, but so far I think we're trending in the right direction and addressing something that I think is a really, really big problem and a scary symptom of AI that we need to fix. All right, let us take a break. We'll come back with our interview with John Lister here on Break the Business.
Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. Our guest this week is the head of content and community at Rap Fame, the music creation app and community that's become an online home for underground hip-hop with more than 1 million active users. He's here to break down Rap Fame's new study, The Rap Report, AI, Subgenres, What's Really Going On with Independent Artists in 2026. The study surveyed 1,500 creators to dig into how independent rappers actually feel about AI, where the genre is heading, and why community is beating clout in the underground. You can find out more about Rap Fame and read the full report at rapfame.app. We are happy to welcome John Lister on to Break the Business. Hi, John.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for the invite. Really pleased to be here.
Thanks for joining us. I'm excited to have this conversation. We're going to hit on a lot of really important issues in this chat, so I'm stoked for it. First, tell us a little bit about Rap Fame. It's a really cool app, really cool community, really providing a valuable service to this underground hip-hop movement.
Yeah, so Rap Fame is a platform. It's a really sort of interesting place, to be honest. It's very, I'd say, authenticity focused. So, you might see people's stories on Instagram or other social media sites, and it's their like best life, living their, those kind of experiences.
Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com. It's a really dynamic, really interesting community that often zigs while the rest
Streaming
of
services
the
for
indie
Break
music
the
community
Business
sort of
provided by
zags on a lot of
LEK
issues.
Entertainment.
And you guys did a really good
Entertainment
job
is
of
a full-service
uncovering that
entertainment
in the
company
study you put
offering
out, the Rap
everything from
Report, AI
consultations
Subgenres,
to
What's Really
full-scale
Going On with
events and
Independent Artists in
productions,
2026.
including
In terms of
audio and
zigging
video
while the rest of the
productions,
community is zagging, I want to get right
staged
to the
theatrical
headline
productions,
finding of your
script
study,
and
because
music
it was pretty
development and
mind-blowing for
streaming
me.
services.
Your study
For more
found that
information, visit
75% of hip-hop creators, of underground hip-hop
LEK
creators,
Entertainment
don't
wants to
use
help you
AI
bring
when
your
making
story
tracks,
to life.
and only about 2% use generative AI regularly.
Contrast that with
Thanks
the
for
fact that your
supporting
study
Break the
found that
Business.
roughly
If you have a question or
75%
topic
of
that you want us
artists
to
in genres
discuss,
like
email
rock,
us
pop,
at
and rock, pop, and jazz
breakthebusiness@gmail.com.
do use AI.
You can follow the host.
Why is
That's me,
underground
on
hip-hop
Twitter at Ryan Kairalla,
pumping the brakes on
and you can
AI
follow
when the rest
show
of
at the
indie music
BTB
seems to be
Podcast. Be
more
sure to subscribe to
interested or
the
at least
show
more
on
curious
Twitch,
about it?
YouTube, and Facebook, and
I
on all
think,
major
that's
podcast
a great
platforms.
question. And I think
now, let's get back to the
main
show.
sort of thing comes from what I just mentioned, which is the authenticity. Because at least on Rap Fame, you can, from people sort of like get a sense of knowing each other. There's a real sense of community. After a while, you hear a song, this is this artist, this is that artist, etc. You can tell when a song is AI. Like, we all know at this point, like, the key things you can hear, the kind of like hits on the high end, the very sort of generic lyrics, all of that stuff. And it just doesn't relate to our community. Like, they don't vibe with it. They don't aspire to be that. And so I think that's the real reason they don't use it. Whereas in other genres, it's a lot harder to tell. And also, using sort of like little things to maybe like sparkle up a guitar or, add some sort of extra feeling to bass is not a situation that rappers need to get themselves into anyway. So that those two in connection probably add to that sort of like crazy headline stat. And, it was something that we were surprised about as well. We thought maybe the numbers would be closer, it would be a difference, but, it does really stand out. But sort of going through, so I was the sort of person who conducted the report, and going through all of those lines of like people's responses, I can tell you for sure, like that's how the community responded.
And for me, one of the most surprising things about that result, and the big gulf that you identified there between the way that underground rap is embracing or not embracing AI versus the rest of the industry, is generally when I think of underground hip hop, I think of a community that is not anti-technology by any means. They've always been on the cutting edge of using new tools to bring out their art and to bring it to the world. So they're not Luddites, right?
No, I mean, yeah, you're right with that. And I think it's just putting those sort of like creative feelings and wanting to kind of like get to the next level, like putting that more into the genres they're creating with, the people they're creating with, the way that they're making music. So, more than half of the people on our platform record all of their songs on their phone. And, we've got a really cool like mobile studio that they can do that in, which is great. But even that as a concept to like more sort of like trained musicians and people who just consider what a musician is kind of a mind-boggling stat in and of itself.
And for the small minority of the underground community that has started to at least dabble in AI, are you seeing any findings about that community in terms of how they're using it? Are they drawing any kind of lines in the sand about, okay, I'll let AI do this, but not that?
That's a brilliant question, actually. I'd say we don't have specifics, but what we can tell for sure is people absolutely love making AI cover art, and they love sort of like embodying themselves into, say, like, familiar scenes. So like I've seen probably about 1 million sort of like variations of 50 Cent's Get Rich or Die Trying cover with like different faces on it, sort of like slightly different things in the background. I'd say in terms of like vocal enhancements, people are a bit sort of, they're a bit push and pull. Some people really do like it. And some people argue that, people use so much processing and auto-tune on their vocals these days that it's hard to tell either way. And I don't know if you've sort of seen, there's a track, not on Rap Fame specifically, but going a bit viral at the moment from Phoenix Flexin from Shoreline Mafia. And it's an 80s sort of throwback type track. And there's a massive debate whether he's recorded it or not, because he's a sort of like West Coast, sort of like LA type rapper. And the person on the song sounds more like me. So I think it's a massive debate just sort of like going on at the moment. And I think it's going to become harder and harder to tell what is an AI track, what is not an AI track. And when you couple that with, very strong feelings, like it could be a recipe for disaster. But I think on our platform, we've added some sort of like AI safeguarding tools. We've added the ability for everyone to like mark their track as certified human when they run it through our sort of AI testing database sort of thing. So there's a lot of things happening, but hopefully it leads to the advancement of and good music.
So tell us more about that. Your platform actually has tools that can help people in the community detect whether or not a track has been influenced by AI?
Yeah. So we've got kind of like three pillars to our AI testing. One we call AI made. The second is AI assisted, and the third is certified human. So on the sort of AI made thing, that's where a track we've run through our back end, our sort of like all our testing stuff, all the stuff that developers know a lot more about, more than me for sure. And it will come out and it will let us know what percent of the track was made with AI, and all tracks that are sort of like fully AI made immediately, sorry, are sort of not allowed in our competitions. They're not allowed in our charts. They're not eligible for sort of like earning from those tracks. So we've kind of drawn a line in the sand, and the community is really sort of like taken to that. And I've seen so many tracks with the certified human sort of stamps on their song cover,
Okay.
which is great.
So if I heard you correctly, like you all have, as some platforms have, drawn a line in the sand saying, like, if it's fully AI made, our platform is not the platform for it. How do you figure out where to draw that line exactly? Because it sounds like, but from what you said, there is a presumption that a little bit of AI is still okay as long as there's still that authenticity there. Has your company had any discussions about where you might draw that line in terms of how much AI is too much AI?
Yeah, we have had those discussions internally, and of course, sort of like as the landscape changes, things might change. But where we are currently is that if you've gone into it with the intention of making a song yourself, and you might have used a few vocal enhancers, you might have used some kind of mastering tool, we're sort of all okay with that. But the things we sort of like fully rule out are, text to audio generation, those kind of things. We don't really see a kind of a value in people competing against those kinds of tracks. And back onto the sort of like assisted sort of section, like I'd say like 90% of songs released today have some kind of AI element in. And maybe don't quote me on that, I'm sure the number's slightly different, but tools like Isotope, Nectar Elements, like all these mixing and mastering tools that are sort of standard in the community do have like AI elements to them, and do sort of like AI analysis, and would on sort of like an AI detector come up as AI assisted.
I mean, the genie is perhaps out of the bottle at some point, but it sounds like your company's decision on where to draw the AI line, and specifically to have an outright ban on completely AI generated tracks. I mean, that not only represents, it sounds like, your own internal values as a company, but based on the findings of your report, meshes very well with the findings of the beliefs of the underground rap community that have shown, it sounds like, a pretty significant skepticism of wholesale integration of AI into their art.
Yeah, I think we as a platform and a company, we are very aligned with the community. We make decisions based on the feedback we get. We have every year we have our own sort of awards, and we have a Man of the Year, Woman of the Year award, like Rookie of the Year, all these types of awards, which are really fun and cool. But me as sort of like the head of community, I speak to these people every day. I have meetings with them. I speak to them on how they can progress in their careers and those kinds of things. But we speak to them about, what do you think about AI? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So that we can learn what creators in our community really want, and we can sort of deliver the best tools for them on that basis.
Well, let's talk about the community more generally now and the folks that you serve. One of the things that I saw in your report that I thought was interesting is this discussion of the, quote, in-between artist, defined as somebody who makes music, who's above the level of just a casual hobbyist, but isn't fully earning their living from music. They're sort of in that space between bedroom rapper and, big time stadium act. And
Yeah.
you were citing research in your from Media saying that the market serving these creators could hit $10 billion by 2030. So this is a huge market that you were indicating that the industry is largely overlooking, and there could be some real opportunities here. Can you tell us more about that in between artists as you know them and why they're currently being overlooked?
Yeah, totally. And I think the stats that you sort of just mentioned are key because it's not something that we even consider. When we're sitting at home with our friends talking about music, talking about our favorite artists, we're not talking about the person who's recording tracks on their phone, getting like 5 to 10,000 listens. We're normally talking about, sort of massive artists or even the like underground artists that you might tell your friends about. They're very much sort of a lot bigger than this level of market. And I think the key thing about these people is that they're the people who are not sort of like necessarily sharing their music with friends and family. They're not, they don't have a big sort of like local scene. They're creating in their bedrooms or they're creating in sort of like spaces like that. And they're really working on taking their music to the next level. And the thing about, sorry, I'm stalling a bit on this question because it's such a difficult question. And I think the main reason these people are forgotten about is simply because they're not known about. That it's a market of millions of people, which adds up to like such a big market cap at the end of the day. And it's easier than ever to make a song. It's easier than ever to make music, and that's why so many people are empowered to. They want to be like they want to be on a stage. They want to be recognized, but there's just so many people these days that the market is absolutely massive.
Well, I can tell you from a consulting side and from the legal side, a lot of what these people want, I mean, some of them want to make money, and we all want to make money, but a lot of them just have a desire to be heard, for their art to make an impact. And they find that even though in 2026, it's easier than ever to create and distribute your music, because it's such a vast ocean, you feel like if you put out something new, it's just sort of throwing it into a deep ocean, just shouting into the void, basically. And so I think one of the things that these in-betweeners are kind of hoping for and demanding, and maybe tech plays a role in this, is they just want to be heard. They want somebody else to hear this. They want it to make an impact with somebody beyond their friends and family. And I know that companies like yours are hearing that cry, and because you're in the community business and want to try to find more ways to get them heard. I mean, do you see any like potential innovations on the horizon or things that you're doing as a company to try to meet that need?
Yeah, totally. And I think we're already innovating quite a lot in that space. And the stuff that we do, I think, could definitely be applied to genres sort of outside of just rap, for example. So one thing we have that's really cool is we call it Judge for Judge. So it's basically where two people they head into Judge for Judge and live their songs are matched up against each other, and they can rate each other's songs. They can add a nice comment. They can directly follow each other. They can directly invite them to do a collab or being part of their crew. So sort of immediately there, like, you're reviewing my track, I'm reviewing your track. We're hearing each other out. We're thinking of ways that we could work together better and collab. And as an added benefit, you get an extra play on your track and maybe an extra like. So do I. So it's serving the purpose of feeling met, feeling heard instantly, as well as kind of increasing your engagement on the platform. Another sort of element to the feedback that we do really well is the way our platform is sort of made or integrated is that people are encouraged to judge other people's tracks, right? So you can open the app, hop on, and just judge new tracks. And as soon as you do that, as soon as you start listening to people's songs, you start seeing things and styles that maybe you wouldn't want to include in your own music. And because of that, you'll give your ratings to these people, but people get heard as a result of that. People get feedback. And I think the best new thing we've added recently, aside from those sort of like feedback loop systems is voice comments. So you can go and judge people's tracks, and you can literally leave a voice comment now. And I think we're the first platform to do it. And the sort of feeling people get when they get nice voice comments is so nice. We've had people make so I'll send you after this, but Juju Andon, he's a sort of like upcoming artist on the platform. He recently made a video on his Insta of him just reacting to all the voice comments he got on the app, and just like, giving his own spin on it and his own take. And I don't know, it was just seeing that, and just like being part of the team that like put that out, and seeing the impact it had on him was just, it was just amazing. Honestly, it meant so much, because we can see how much it means to them, and that's the kind of stuff that like keeps us going, keeps us trying to innovate in the space.
That's really interesting, because I mean, generally when I think of the advancements of technology in music, and how powerful they've been in terms of allowing us to reach large audiences, the idea of 20 years ago or 30 years ago, creating a track in your bedroom and somebody on the other side of the world being able to hear it was unheard of. And now it's, just regular. And so,
That's just normal.
What I think is interesting is, despite that reach of technology, there is a lot about the emergence of technology in music that's made the experience very isolating. When you can make a rap album in your bedroom, it means you're never leaving your bedroom. And, we've, in a sense, a lot of music communities, including the underground rap community, are losing that community, right? You're less incentivized to actually get out into the physical world and, share your music and others and network, and, everybody's dispersed, because you don't have to leave leave your house anymore to do a lot of the things you used to have to do as an underground rap artist. But it sounds like, whereas technology created this problem, platforms like yours are trying to create the solution. That judge for judge tool, or just those voice comment tools, are sort of allowing technology to create relationships and to create, feedback and things like that. And, that must be really heartening and satisfying for you to know that you're part of that solution.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing thing to be involved with, and sort of adding tools to bring people closer together rather than further apart is sort of what we're all about. As part of my role with the company, hopefully, in fingers crossed, but in the next few months, the aim is to move me to the States so that I can sort of even further that. So we're going to be setting up sort of in-person events for like top community members who've won competitions. We're going to be trying to do writing camps. We're going to try and encourage more crew link ups. So another big part of the platform is crews. So anyone can start a crew. I think it's up to about 25 members at the moment. And you can sort of invite sort of like-minded people that you met on the app. You can invite your friends from outside. And within those crews, everyone has their own role and personality. But the cool thing is you can do sort of like crew competitions, and every single week we've got a crew competition where different crew members from these different crews sort of go up against each other, which is awesome. And like, back to your point, I'm just really excited about progressing that even further. And who knows sort of like what will happen. And I think it's just a really exciting time for a platform like ours, because we're a different platform. We're new. We move fast with like new things that we're doing. There's a lot of innovative sort of young talent, as well as like much older talent on the platform. And that kind of like integration of so many different types of people from so many different spaces really leads to some sort of like exciting stuff. And I can see us challenging in the next few years. Like I'm really confident about that, and I'm really excited for that.
And when I think about the things that you are working on, that Rap Fame is working on, that must make you feel really good about the community you're building and what you get to do every day. I turn myself to the passage in your report about mental health, and how it talks about underground hip hop being, quote, an unsung path to better mental health. Your report notes that around 30% of your users are making emotional beats, and crediting the community with helping them through real struggles. So you're not just creating a place where artists can get together and make art. They're helping themselves emotionally. I mean, Was that something that you all expected when you were making this platform? Was it just a pleasant surprise? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know what? I think it was more of a pleasant surprise, to be honest, that we quickly realized was a real thing. So, when we're talking about like looking after your mental health and, all of those kinds of things, the image that a lot of people have is maybe someone sitting with a gong in a yoga studio, being sort of all relaxed, getting out their qualms that way. But that's not how it happens for real people. Like someone living in, Harlem or someone like that, like that's just not their, or even in London, like that's just not necessarily their vibe. If you grew up in a council estate in London, like that couldn't be further from a yoga studio, even though it's like a few streets across. And what we found is that people value so much just opening the app, clicking record, and just sharing their feelings, whether it be freestyle, whether it be writing. We've got we got a little rhyme helper tool to help people, get the next rhyme on their verses and stuff like that. Just getting that, maybe negative or maybe whatever feelings you might have, heartbreak, whatever, like just getting those feelings out, sharing those to the community, getting feedback saying, you know what, this is actually pretty decent. This is a pretty good song, like well done. And the feeling that can have for someone is just sort of like so far from maybe where they might be in their life of experiencing difficulty, and just getting all that sort of amazing feedback.
Gosh, that's really cool. Our guest has been the head of content and community at Rap Fame, John Lister. The Rap Fame is a music creation app and community. It's been a online home for a million active users, so many creators. I encourage you all to check out the new report put out by Rap Fame called the Rap Report, AI Subgenres, What's Really Going On with Independent Artists in 2026. You can check it out at rapfame.app and also find out more about this pretty cool community they got going on here. John, before we let you go, we got one last question for you. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
For sure. Obviously, I'd say start by downloading Rap Fame. But the next steps, I'd say, is, follow suit in what creators on the platform do. So be authentic, like when you're, in any space, be authentic, be yourself, because you could be a nerd, you could be a jock, you could be thin, you can be fat, you can be whatever. As long as you're yourself and you're authentic and you share and you're pushing for a goal and you're trying to improve, someone somewhere out there will relate to it.
Very well said. John, thank you so much for telling us more about this report, telling us more about Rap Fame, and just sharing your insights with us. Love the hang, man.
I appreciate it a lot, Ryan. Cheers.
Back, everybody. Our thanks to John Lister for joining us. What'd you think, Zach? I think you were largely right in terms of your predictions of why there was that big gulf between the non-existent embrace of AI by the underground rap community relative to the rest of the industry. I think you just about nailed it.
I mean, that was a really interesting interview. I was listening to it off air. I think when this podcast drops, I'm going to go back and listen to that again, because he had some very interesting insights, especially about those in-between artists that I want to kind of listen to again. And because that's kind of where I count myself. So I think that was really thought-provoking, and I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Right on. All right. Our thanks to John Lister and Zach Sloan. Our thanks to producer Lauren, and our thanks to all of you for checking out Break the Business. We'll see you next week.